most of the time, by the time somebody gets into my office, they have been contemplating divorce for 3 years or more, or they've been blindsided by their spouse. Just one of two possibilities. And each person, depending on which camp you're in, you are experiencing something very different. So the person who's been blindsided is basically asked to catch up emotionally to the person who's spent 3 or more years already grieving the loss of their marriage. Who I need to be.
Welcome back to MOMnation from the Heart. And now a word from our sponsor.
Hello, this is Veronica with Spa Specialist Beauty Within, where we believe that beauty truly starts from within. Being healthy on the inside will definitely show on the outside. You can purchase gift certificates, buy products, book your spa services, or even holistic coaching right from our website at www.spaspecialistbeautywithin.com or call us at 603-858-1556. Have an amazing day.
Hey, MOMnation, we're back with another episode of From the Heart, where we share inspirational stories, useful information, and we discuss a variety of women-related topics. I'm Katie, the founder of MOMnation, and I'd love to extend a very warm welcome to our beautiful co-host, Cheri. Hello.
Hello. How's everybody doing today?
Amazing. How are you doing today?
Fantastic.
Good. It seems like I saw some photos. It seems like you had a pretty awesome holiday.
Yeah, we went on lots of adventures.
That's nice. And the feast looked pretty phenomenal. Was that all you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I cooked. Well, I had a little bit of help for sure. But we had a Friendsgiving. So it was really, really nice to have that this year and not be like just alone in us. So
yeah. Well, it looked awesome. I'm so glad. And
thank you. What about you guys? What did you do?
You're welcome. So my mom had a little get together at her place, pretty low key. You know, we don't really have a ton of family here. So it was just a few people. And it was great. Very relaxing.
That is good. Did you guys go out to the boat or anything?
No, we haven't been in a while. Yeah.
Too cold?
Well, no. I'll just dress up like Billie in that cozy little sweatshirt or sweater she's got on, and I'll be good to go. It's just remodeling a house is kind of a big deal.
I know. I'm so excited. Like, I can't wait to see it.
Yes. I'll share some pictures of progress. We've got some good progress this week, so I'll have to share some. Without further ado, though, we have an amazing guest today, and I am really, really excited to dig into this topic because I know that it's really on the hearts and minds of a lot of people out there. The unfortunate part of it, Billie, is that many people deal with this. I'm sure you see it day in and day out because this is what you do. But it's life, right? I mean, things happen, and the better equipped that we are to deal with it in a healthy, respectable way for all parties, the better it is for our children. And they're really the bottom line here, right?
Absolutely. After divorce, parents are usually better off. Usually, eventually, both parents mentally, like emotionally, the whole deal are better off. And you really worry about, are the kids better off? And what can we do to make that most likely?
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to dig into this topic. Today, we're going to talk with Billie Tarascio, Modern Law. She is an absolute rock star. She's here in the Phoenix area. Billie, remind me, you've been here in Phoenix for 12 years?
Yes. Goodness, girl.
Hey.
Impressive.
Good. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but I remember how long Billie Tarascio has been in business here in Phoenix, Arizona.
That's amazing.
Right. So welcome. And of course, we do have Cheri here. And I was telling Billie before we got on the show, she's kind of like lucky with the two hosts that she has here because Cheri's been through it.
I'm a pro.
Cheri's pro. As a mama going through it with kids, and I'm actually the adult child of having gone through it. So my parents divorced when I was 2, and I have a lot of memory of that actually, and kind of how it felt as the child in the situation. So I'm really excited for the discussion to unfold. But Billie, so let's start at the beginning, really. You've got somebody come in, they share their story with you. What next?
What next? So everybody's journey is different. Most of the time, by the time somebody gets into my office, they have been contemplating divorce for 3 years or more, or they've been blindsided by their spouse. Just one of two possibilities. And each person, depending on which camp you're in, you are experiencing something very different. So the person who's been blindsided is basically asked to catch up emotionally to the person who's spent 3 or more years already grieving the loss of their marriage and the hopelessness and the despair. They've done that while in their marriage, and the other person really is expected to just catch up so we can divide our stuff and figure out what's best for the kids. It's rough.
Yeah, that seems intense. And so do you have any examples? And obviously it's confidentiality. We don't want to share names or anything like that, but do you have any examples of that, of being so blindsided? I mean, how can you not know?
How can you not know? I mean, I think for Cheri and I'm divorced as well. Cheri and I probably both lived what I just described. Cheri, were you party A or party B?
I've been on both sides. So I'm now separated. So this will be my second divorce. So I was the latter this time. The previous marriage, I was definitely, I mean, it was an abusive situation. So I was ready to get out of that for years, like you were saying. So.
And very interestingly, most of the time, women file for divorce. Women are 66% of divorce filings. So, 2 out of 3 times, women are filing for divorce.
Wow. Interesting. That's quite a statistic.
It is. And so what does that feel like? Well, I mean, Cheri has experienced both ways. I was the person who initiated my divorce. And it was really interesting because I knew as a divorce attorney watching this play out for my entire adult life in other people's lives that the reason people get divorced is when there's a deal breaker that just happens over and over and over. Like a fundamental problem for some person in the relationship that isn't getting fixed despite your best efforts. And so I was attempting to communicate that extremely clearly, like, we're in trouble. Like I thought I was so clear, and he was still blindsided. So
I think that sometimes it's that you don't want to see it. It's not that you necessarily don't, or, you want to believe that, it's not a deal breaker. Like maybe they don't understand that it is a deal breaker.
Well, right, because it's not a deal breaker in the moment. So is it really a deal breaker?
Right.
And so even when we're putting up boundaries in an abusive situation, nobody can time when they're actually truly done. And so we have to refrain from judging others on when they might hit that point in their life when they're truly done. And so I think it can be confusing, and relationships are complicated, and sometimes deal breaker, behavior resolves itself and the couple goes on to live happily ever after. And then other times they're in a divorce. But by the time they're in my office, usually it looks like a divorce is coming. And so we've got two things going on. We've got a massive emotional process that each individual in the family is experiencing. Every single person in that family is experiencing something different and hugely traumatic and emotionally transformative. And then you've got the legal process,
which is exhausting in itself. Like depending on how long you've been married, oh my gosh, Billie, find this, find that. You need to have this data, these numbers, these accounts, literally everything that you've ever purchased, you've ever done together your whole life. So on top of all of that emotional turmoil, regardless of which team you're on, it's a lot.
You are so right. And it's financially just devastating because the expenses that come along with your divorce, there's legal costs, which we know are astronomical. And then there's, how do I get a new house? How do I get new furniture? How do I make sure my kids have enough clothes for 2 houses? I don't want them to have to pack and go back and forth. Like the expenses are massive.
Well, and also like for me right now, your married bills don't just go away. And then now I have a new rental property and new utilities on top of all of the things that are still in my name at the old place, which I don't want my credit to go south. So here we are figuring it out. And if that person doesn't want to, I have to figure it out. So it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Wow. So I just got so overwhelmed by all of that. And I know it's just the tip of the iceberg. So somebody's sitting in your office, and let's just say they're even from Camp A, where they knew it was coming and they've had, the opportunity to mentally process and emotionally process this, but they're still going to be dealing with things, and they're going to be dealing with the stuff that Cheri just mentioned. Is there ever an opportunity, or does it ever come into the conversation where you suggest maybe that person or everyone in the family seek counseling?
Always. I mean, if it's available to you, it cannot hurt. All four of my kids did some form of play therapy or therapy. I didn't really know that they needed it, but it was helpful. I mean, it's a change, and any change that anyone goes through, any change that big is so impactful that having the ability to work it out in some way, be it play therapy or in therapy, is a great thing if you can swing it.
And would you then say that if somebody were to do that and they were to get the therapy that they need and seek counseling, then it seems like it would naturally make what they have to go through a lot easier, because they're not throwing up the extra behaviors that may not get the right reaction back that they're looking for. Does that make sense? Am I being clear? Like, in other words, if they're able to deal with their own crap and kind of keep that in a more of a healthy sort of pattern when they're dealing with the other person, when they're talking with, all the people that they have to get this moving forward, I feel like it's just much easier for everybody involved in that case.
I think the biggest impact it can have is on your ability to be a present, positive parent, because in the process of divorce, there are some couples that manage to do it with little conflict. And then there are other couples that, despite everyone's best intentions, there's no universe in which they're going to get through this divorce without a high level of conflict. And so in that case, you sort of have to just compartmentalize and be as healthy as you possibly can be as your own individual self, and be present and positive and focused and checked in with your kids, and then resolve yourself to the fact that, divorce is going to be a huge conflict.
Yeah. Something, and I don't know if you tell your clients this or something along these lines, but my lawyer in my first divorce told me, no matter what, everybody loses something in divorce. Everyone, whether you guys are able to work together or not, or it's huge conflict, like you said. And I didn't really know what that meant going in, right? Because I was in an abusive situation. So like, I was thinking worst case scenario, because that's just who I am. But I got a lot of things that I wanted in the divorce, but still everybody loses, right? And so after that whole situation, I really understood what that meant, whether it's the kids. I mean, everybody in their own capacity loses something, because you're no longer that unified household. But what I was going to tell you about the counseling, Katie, you mentioned that. So just thinking as adults, right? Like, we don't always cope the best, especially in an emotional situation. So we need to understand and recognize that, especially for littles, this is a ton of change and emotion that they're going through. And if they don't learn how to properly cope with that, I mean, there's definitely going to be some issues later on that build up. So it's better to nip that in the bud early on.
Being the child in this situation, looking at it from an adult standpoint, I feel like it's so much more confusing for the child, because they don't know what's going on. They don't know what the details of the relationship were. They didn't live either side of that. And they still love the parents.
Especially at 2 or 3 or whatever, you're little, all of a sudden you're moved out of your house and you're living in a brand new place. And I know my 3-year-old was like, when are we going back to the other house? And it broke my heart. And still she'll ask about the other house. And we've been gone for what, 7 months. So it kills me. But you touched on something really great, Katie, is that as a parent, like, even though my first marriage, he was very abusive, never, ever, ever would I ever speak poorly about him. Even to this day, I've never said anything bad about him, because kids are very smart. They're also very resilient, but they don't need that. That's still a part of them. That's still their parent. So, just trying to not use the kids as pawns, I think, is the biggest thing. And just not bring them into the adult situation. How do you recommend parents that aren't able to work together in any universe do that, Billie?
Agree. Good question.
Oh, well, your question, I have a question for you after we talk about this. So your question is, how do parents who hate each other shield children from their conflict? I mean, you're doing it. You need, it's like, do you talk to your kids about your sex life? No. It's like that. You just put it in the bucket of my sex life. Like, none, like, would you ever consider talking about that with your children? Of course not, right? That's just where you put your divorce. So what do they need to know? They need to know what affects them. Where will I live? Where will I go to school? When will I see both parents? Like all of the communication for them should be surrounding their questions and what matters to them, not your relationship and what went down. Like, you need talking points for that, which is essentially, sometimes relationships don't always last forever or something like that. You guys decide what your talking points are that is age appropriate, and just what do you need to know? You need to know that mom and dad still love you so, so, so much. We just don't like living together anymore, or something like that. And then in terms of moving, like, kids move houses. They miss their old house, but they can, we move sometimes as kids, and that can be a positive change. So a lot of it is about how we are messaging the change. And at the same time, you want to avoid the toxic positivity that is, this is going to be a great thing for all of us. Like, let your kids grieve the loss of their family. So there was a lot there, but one question that I've got for you, Cheri, is how you manage to share children with an ex who was abusive. Because every time you are exposed to him, you might be re-traumatized. That's one issue. And then the other issue is, how do you know your kids are safe?
So luckily for me, that is one of the things that was a positive in my divorce, because there was significant child abuse against my oldest child. He has no visitation, no custody, nothing.
Oh, he's out of the picture.
Yeah. But did that bring other issues? Of course, because she was 4 and she only remembered the good things. And so initially she would ask about him. And that in itself was hard for me. Like, my baby's missing a monster, right? Like, that hurt in itself. And eventually it got to, I want you to have a new daddy. Like, oh, kids say the craziest things, and you're just like already going through this emotional roller coaster, and they just hit you sometimes in the heart. But yeah, no, thankfully that is one thing that I'm very glad for. I don't know how I could deal with that. Like, sending my child to stay with somebody that I know is abusive, that hurt my oldest child. So it's not even just abusive towards me. I don't think I could do that. So I definitely have so much love and appreciation for moms that, aren't as lucky as me in that scenario. And I feel for them.
Yeah, for sure. So being the child, back to the whole parents, Cheri you had said you've never said a bad word about him. And I know that to be true. Being a child in this situation and having teenage parents pretty much is what I had. Very, very early 20s, if that kind of thing. They were nowhere near emotionally mature enough to have a baby, let alone be married and go through all the things that they went through. But both parents are guilty of speaking poorly about the other parent. And as a child, that is beyond destruction. I mean, beyond destruction, because now what am I doing? Well, I want to protect my mom because I feel like my mom needs protection. And now I'm having these feelings toward my dad that I have no business having because they aren't my feelings. It's not what I went through. And what that caused inside of me as a child on both ends created, I mean, I'm grateful for everything that's happened in my life, but created a huge opportunity for me to need some therapy in the adult world after I had gone through relationships myself and had completely destroyed them and couldn't figure out why. And I just, it's, sorry, giant.
Well, and you every single one of us should know, like 101, divorce 101. Don't talk shit about your ex or the other person's, the dad, the mom. You just don't do it.
Billie, can you send me some of these tips and tricks so we can post online?
I mean, we all know that, right? We all know that, but there are, it's easier said than done. It comes in many flavors. It has a tendency to leak out in ways we don't intend. And we have to be truly careful. I mean, we have to be careful because anytime we create a loyalty bind, we are destroying our children. We're doing exactly what happened to you, Katie. And it can happen over little things like, your child can be complaining to you about the other parent. And if you say something like, well, dad's always that way, you've done it. Oops, loyalty bind. Like, so they eke out. It doesn't have to be, your dad never pays his child support. He's, it doesn't have to be direct. It can be sending your children back and forth as messengers. It can be leaking out, well, you can't count on him to do blah, blah, blah. So we have to be so careful in how we talk to our kids about their other parent.
Or even like venting to your friends when the kids are around. Like, I think that people think that that's not, I'm not talking to my kids, so it's not me telling my kids. But still, they shouldn't be hearing any of that.
It's your sex life. Lock it up.
Exactly. And my thing is none of this is my junk.
Right.
This is like all y'all's junk. You decided to do it. You did it. It's not my junk. And now I'm growing up with their junk. Great. Awesome. You know what I mean? Question for you, Billie. Back to when you said there's two different types of scenarios. There's one where they get along, it goes pretty smooth, we get what we need to do. And then there's the other one where no universe is ever going to be perfect enough for these two to get along, to get what we need done. Why do you think? Like, what patterns do you see?
Well, it's an interesting question. So every divorce, like every relationship, is unique because we're talking about two very unique individuals and their relationship. And at the same time, you can see patterns. And usually you can predict the divorce based on the patterns within the marriage. And so I'll ask the clients and potential clients, like, what is it like when you all fight, and give me an example of your last huge fight. And how does your ex respond to speeding tickets? Has your ex ever been reprimanded at work? How does that go down? Like, if you can track how somebody deals with conflict, and understand how they work psychologically, then you can build a plan ideally that makes you more likely to be successful. And when I say successful, it means, without conflict, minimizing conflict as much as possible, minimizing the number of trials you have to go to, minimizing the number of issues you have to litigate versus the number of issues that you can settle, minimizing the number of court appearances you can have, maximizing mediation, that sort of thing.
I just want to open up my mind so you can see tapes of what happened when I was a kid, because man, do I have all kinds of good content for you. But do you see a kid come in with your client? Do you often see the kids come in, or do you not see the kids?
So now most of our meetings are on Zoom, and so
Okay.
we see them less. But even when we did in-person consultations, it does happen with more regularity than I'd like. And sometimes the young adult children, insist on being part of that consultation. And if they're adults, then they're certainly allowed. But I really discourage it. And then if they're younger, then we make them sit in the lobby. But like, who wants kids sitting in the lobby while mom talks to a divorce attorney? So then, we do our best to give them a tablet and turn on a movie and give them coloring crayons, but it's just, you just hate to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. What about if you start to uncover something that might not be readily disclosed to you in terms of abuse and things that are going on with that child? When do you interject with that? Is that something that you do? Like, talk to me about that.
What can a family law attorney do when it's determined that child abuse is occurring?
Or if you suspect it?
Well, the first question is, if you suspect the opposing party has been abusive, you need to ask. If you suspect that your client might be abusive, that's usually because the other party is alleging as such. And then we have to ask questions like, tell me, what does your discipline look like? And the one nice thing about family law and family court is it's fairly easy to tell everyone, like, no corporal punishment. Like, that's just not allowed now. Whatever you did when you were married, whatever tactics you engaged in for discipline, now that you are part of this process, you have to learn other techniques. And so we can encourage parenting classes. We can require, counseling between children and the parents, that sort of thing. And then if it's not borderline, because there's borderline discipline that is too far. And then there's people who are mentally unstable and straight up abusive. And then we have to ask for, no parenting time, supervised parenting time, therapeutic intervention, that sort of thing.
How is that decided? Is that something that's decided during the trial?
No, we would need to do that immediately. So it takes a long time to get to trial. So, we have a number of cases currently where the children and the clients have been victims of domestic violence. You can either get an order of protection if the child has been a victim of domestic violence by the other party, and that is an immediate, you go to court that day, you walk out with a court order that day, there's no contact. And sometimes that's the very best thing to do. But it can get a little complicated if you also have a family court case going. So we can also get a temporary order for no contact or for supervised visits only. And you can always file an emergency order to suspend parenting time if something has happened.
So I have a question pertaining to that. So my ex had gotten arrested, and then I was able to go get an emergency order. But I remember, so I had attempted to get a restraining order prior to that, before the last time. And it was in Arizona. The state of Arizona stated that because he was the biological father of my second child, that they would only issue me a restraining order for me and my oldest that was not his biologically. So then, of course, as a parent she was just an infant at the time. I'm not going to leave my newborn with someone like that who's out of control. So I stayed. I reached back out and I was like, hey, I'm sorry, whatever. Went back to that. The emergency order of protection, I think it was a week, and I had to have somebody come forward besides me saying that he was abusive towards his biological child. So I had to.
Let's back up. So a lot of things you said there. So let's start with, you got the order of protection. There was abuse against you and one of your children, but not direct abuse of his biological child. So in order to get an order of protection on behalf of a specific child, there has to be abuse to that child, or abuse in the presence of that child. Somehow domestic violence has to have occurred to them. But even though there wasn't an order of protection issued with your infant on it, that doesn't prevent you from leaving with your infant.
Yeah, I know, but I was the only one that worked and everything was in my name. So I would have had to leave my house and basically give it to him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So-
Well, if you had the order of protection for you, he would have had to have left.
Maybe. I don't know. It was a long, hard road.
Yeah.
And
And
you know,
then-
thinking about having to give my infant to him, like it was just, there was just too much.
Totally. Yeah. And then the other thing is, so you walk in, you get this order of protection. They can't come near you or any other protected persons or any other addresses that you list, like, where you work or
So-
whatnot.
Katie, I don't know if you remember this. So once he got arrested and I got the actual order of protection against all of us, emergency, he decided to move in with our neighbors. And they were like, well, we can't do anything about it. So he would sit outside on his car and watch us in the garage, getting ready, going to school every single day. Or he would follow us to school because he knew where the kids went to school. He would sit in a parking lot across from school. He was stalking us.
Yeah.
And then said, until he did something to me or said something, I couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, that's awful.
That's crazy.
Stalking is a crime of domestic violence. The
Right.
problem is you've got a lawyer who's telling you, technically speaking, what should happen, what the law is, yada, yada, yada. And that does not help you in the moment when you're trying to navigate this all yourself, when he's not following any of the rules, when you're not exactly sure how to hold him accountable. Should I call the police? Should I amend my order of protection? What am I supposed to do? And then on top of that, how am I supposed to come up with the money I need to hire a lawyer to tell me all this stuff?
Well, yeah. So my lawyer was amazing. She let me come in on my lunch and then after work to help with findings and like doing all of the research essentially to help cut down on hours that it would take her and it would charge me. So that was super helpful. Plus she previously studied criminal law. So she was giving me a lot of pointers on the state charging him. Sorry, I was getting a call.
That's okay.
So the state actually took over the child abuse case and was charging him with that. Extreme abuse against an extreme minor because of her age. It was that she was 7. But she was helping me, giving me tidbits of information to use in that as well. So I really appreciated her for that, but it was a long, still 2 years. So you were saying that sometimes divorce takes a long time. It took 2 years and mine was a little bit longer because the judge did want to see what happened with the state child abuse aspect before he made any parenting decisions. But man, if it wasn't for my lawyer, like there's no way I would have gotten through it. So if you are in this situation and there's a lot of things going on, I highly recommend getting an expert to back you.
Yeah, for sure. I can see why that is really, really important. So Billie, time for court. Okay. Time to go. We've got maybe this scenario with the order of protection going on. What are we needing to do as your client to prepare to go to court?
Well, as Cheri was saying, there's a lot of information gathering and evidence producing that has to occur within your divorce case. Now, way before you go to court, like we described like 8 different phases of a divorce, and court is the 7th phase. So a lot has happened before you go to court for a final trial. You may have already had a temporary orders hearing. You've probably had an RMC or some sort of a non-evidentiary status conference with the judge. You probably have gone to mediation. You've certainly exchanged information. Maybe you've done depositions. So before you go to court, you should be well prepared. You should know exactly what are the issues that are left that I have to litigate. And when I say litigate, it means what are the issues that the judge needs to decide? What is the law on those issues? What do I want? And what is the evidence that supports my position is essentially what we do as lawyers and what you do if you're representing yourself. Now, if you're representing yourself, you have a tough job because you have to be two characters. You have to be the lawyer and the mom and the parent. And those two are different characters and you have to now blend them. So as the mom, you need to show up in a certain way, not argumentative, not combative. As the lawyer, it's your job to point out that they're lying. It's a tough, fine line to walk. So you really, really do want to prepare. And the best way to prepare is honestly to do it. Like, even if you're getting on Zoom and you're recording yourself and you're listening to yourself, like listen to your tone while you testify, while you say what's important to you and what you're asking, listen back to it and be like, do I like the way that sounds? Is there attitude there? And I'll tell you, judges are harsher on women than they are men. They just are. So you have to be, careful to a certain extent. And I feel most badly for women who are leaving their abusers and then trying to advocate for themselves and their children in this state that is so supportive of both parents being involved to as much extent possible. And one of the biggest factors on legal decision-making and parenting time is which parent supports the other's relationship with the children. Now, the second half of that statute says, unless there was abuse, but the judges seem to focus on the first half of the statute. So as much as you can record yourself, role play, war game it, get your friends, it'll be better.
Totally agree. I feel like that's with anything, right? If you're going to give a big talk or if you're going to get up on stage and sing a song, it's really important to be in that. And it's like practice. If you're a football player, you're going to go to practice, right? So I feel like that makes a lot of sense. As the client, again, say there's an abuse situation going on, and that ball is sort of rolling alongside this ball. Obviously, that's something that comes into play, right? So is that a different attorney that's coming into play in that area, or is that? Talk to me about that, because I'm clueless.
Sure. So you've got three different things that could be going on. You've got an order of protection, which is a separate case number than your family court action. It's a separate set of rules. It's a separate set of rules of procedure. Then you've got family court, which is its own set of rules, its own judge, its own procedures. And then you've got criminal court, which is a completely different ballgame. So they each have different levels of proof required and different consequences in each of those different courthouses. So if someone is being charged with a crime, a prosecutor is charging them, and you don't really have to be involved except to the extent that you might be a witness. In family court, you have to prove that abuse occurred because it's going to impact the parenting time and decision making, and you are the one who has to prove it. So you have to prove it through testimony, or written evidence, text messages between the two of you, photographs, witnesses. It could be any of those things.
You just made me think of something. So if any mom is going through this or in the, hey, I'm figuring out if I'm going to be divorced in 3 years or whatever phase you're in, documentation is everything. So if you are struggling with somebody who's abusive, make sure you're writing it down, taking notes, days, times, what was said, especially with narcissists. Like, they do a great job of making you think that you're crazy. So write all of it down, because you can use that later. So I'm sure Billie will attest to, just having your homework and having all of those things in place will help make her job a lot easier.
And so could part of your testimony in the family court part of things be, hey, Your Honor, he's currently in criminal case right now for XYZ?
Absolutely. Police reports, witness statements, charging reports, probation reports, past criminal history, past reports, absolutely. All of it. So the thing about family court that's really interesting is the rules of evidence, hearsay, all those rules of evidence are out the door. Everything that is relevant gets in.
Do the kids ever get on the stand?
Never.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel better. I never was. So that makes me feel better that they don't get on the stand.
No, if they need a voice, you can do that in a number of ways. You can get them their own attorney. You can have them interviewed by a court-appointed person who will then relay their thoughts. But then you're going through this third-party person who's going to also wrap it up in their observations and opinions. So it's not really the pure like children saying what they need to say. You really should not have your children write letters to the judge. Don't do it. Like, shield them from the process as much as you possibly can. And at the same time, give them a voice, usually through a counselor or their own attorney.
Yeah, I can't agree enough, being an adult child of going through, having divorced parents. I cannot agree enough with your advice to shield the kids from it. I can't. What I have gone through and what I still deal with at 42 years old because of that. And I'm not blaming either of my parents. I feel they probably did the best they could with what they had. But I'm picking up the pieces. I'm dealing with the damage. And to have avoided that, yeah, you know what? Life unfolds in mysterious ways. Maybe I needed to go through that for other things, blah, blah. But to avoid that, I mean, I'm not in this situation with my husband, but if I were, I wouldn't want my kiddo to be feeling like that and to be going through that and to be destroying their adult relationships because they're running these patterns that don't even belong to them. I just think that's huge, huge, huge.
Yeah, it is. And what it really comes down to is like, what can parents do to ensure they are shielding their children? What can you do? What are your top tips? Like, Cheri, do you have any?
So I use past experience. So my oldest daughter, I was never married to her dad, but his wife and I maybe didn't get along in the past, right? Her youngest and my oldest are like a month apart. So we didn't like each other for a long time. But I
understandable.
Right. I mean, it was, yeah, but I think we were mad at the wrong people. And so it took us some growing up, like we were both 20, we were young. But she's one of my most favorite people in the whole wide world now. We have an amazing relationship. So I was actually going to ask you a question too about this, but we're best friends now. I rarely talk to my oldest dad because I don't need to, because her and I talk almost every day. So I love that. And so I'm seeing a lot of trends on TikTok where co-parenting is cool. Like, it's cool to be friends with your ex and their new love or whoever, because guess what? At the end of the day, she branched out the olive branch. She sent me this letter from, who was it? Jada Pinkett Smith. And it was back in the day when Jada Pinkett was going through all of this stuff too. And she basically said something along the lines of like, this person's in my child's life as well. And that's what I thought about is, hey, my kid is going to stay there. And so when she's there, I know realistically, like it's not that her dad's bad dad. He's an amazing dad, but he works all the time. So who's taking care of my kid? Guess what? This amazing bonus mom. So why would I not want to have a great relationship with her to make sure that it's the best relationship for my daughter and her as well? And so she knows and trusts her. And so just kind of getting out of that, hey, they're together. Like, stop thinking about it like that. You guys didn't work out. That's okay. Not everybody's meant to be together, but what is really best for the kids is seeing these adults act like adults.
Yeah.
And if we can't cope with our emotions and things in a positive light, how can we expect our kids to? That's when kids start acting out. And then we're upset that they're acting out. No, we can't have both ways. So even though my current ex and I, we didn't do well. It was not a great relationship. And there was a lot of bad juju at the end. I always make sure that I call her so she can talk to her child. And I want my daughter to have a great relationship with her. And if she starts dating somebody else, I still want my daughter to go there. I want to know that person. It's about taking yourself out of the situation and really looking at your kids and what's of value to them long term.
Ding, ding, ding. Stop thinking about yourselves so much out there, people, and think about the little human that is eventually going to be an adult that you are raising and what is going on inside their head. Such a huge thing, Cheri. And I'm so glad that you brought it up, because both of my parents have been married several times now. And that was always a thing too. So like my parents never liked the other spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it was all throughout my entire life. So not only was there conflict between my parents that I'm dealing with, but now I feel bad if I like dad's new girlfriend, because mom is upset about that. And I want to protect my mom. And now is she resenting me because I have a great relationship with dad's new girl? Why can't I? Why can't I have a great relationship with an adult that is caretaking for me? Why not?
Right. Right. You're divorced. Like, part of this is like, own up to the reality. And who is the center of the universe here? The center of the universe should be the children.
Right.
So should you do holidays and birthdays together? Should you sit together at games? The answer is if you can. If you can do so without conflict, yes.
Yeah.
Your kids will love it. At the same time, if you two being in the same room is so tense that your kids feel like they want to throw up, then maybe not yet. Like, I would hope that the answer is that is something that we're all striving for, because, we're a restructured family. Like what you mentioned, on TikTok, and the trend of divorce is that we look at this differently. You are a restructured family that gets a little complicated, but everybody's on the same team when the team is team kid.
Yep. And why can we not be on team kid? Because we're probably dealing with our own trauma responses that never got taken care of in the first place, right? So it just all goes back to counseling, Billie.
Counseling and control, and then whatever dynamics existed in your marriage are going to continue. So some superpower is to figure out like what worked when I was married. I don't have to love this person anymore. I don't have to share space with them anymore. But how was it that we coexisted for as long as we did? And how do we get back to that?
Totally. So there's a lot, obviously, emotionally and mentally. We're not going to get through in the 1 hour that we're spending together here, all of that by any means. And I know that. Couple of tips before we run here. About what to physically prepare for. Cheri had mentioned a few things at the very beginning of the episode where you're, having to track down bank statements and things like that. Can you give some ideas of some different things that people typically have to deal with?
Yeah. So I talked about how divorce is a lot of different things. It's the emotional, it's the legal, and I didn't say it's the practical, but now is where we talk about the practical. Like, now is where you need to make sure that you understand your personal finance. You need to understand your budget. How much is it going to cost me to live? How am I going to logistically get my kids to where they need to be when I'm no longer married? Who's going to be my babysitter? Like, it's time to think practically, because if you're really setting yourself up for success beyond divorce, it's about how my practical life will run. So, the legal stuff is how do I gather documents, and all of that is important, but nothing is really more important than setting yourself and your kids up for success. Do we live close enough to make our parenting plan work? Like if we've decided on a parenting plan, like how is it going to physically work? Who's going to do the driving? How are we going to decide, who gets signed up for what and how they'll get to their various sports? Like the practical aspects should probably be of paramount importance. And that means understanding how your life will run, how childcare, school, money, housing. Then in terms of documents, it's kind of like a whole separate bucket. What do I need to prove legally? Which starts with what do we agree on and what do we disagree on? If we agree on things, we can take them off the table. We don't have to waste our time and energy and money gathering documents and proving different things because we can agree. So chip away to figure out what you can agree on, determine what's left, then you determine what documents and proof you need to gather.
Have you ever had somebody come in and they're like, well, we talked and she's going to do this and he's going to do that and we're good with it. So what next?
Yes.
Let's
Yes.
talk about that, because I feel like that happens.
It does. It does happen. And sometimes I look at those documents and I'm like, what? No.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. But there is so much value to them. And as long as they understand, as long as the client understands, I know what I'm giving up, I know what I'm getting, I understand the pros, the cons, and the cost, and this is what I want. Great, done. We'll do it. All we need to do is process the divorce. And that is so easy. 60 days, a petition, a consent decree, a filing fee. That's it. And getting you divorced can be very easy. And we have a flat fee, low cost arm that will do it for $1,000. Done. So as long as it's fair and there's not an imbalance of power and you have an agreement, there's no problems. Other times you do have a real imbalance of power and you have somebody who's just leaving with nothing because they want out of the conflict. Now, sometimes that's a terrible decision. If you're giving up, I know one mom who didn't really have parenting time with her kids because she just wanted so badly to be done and to be out. And he had so much power and so much control. And he kept the house and the kids, and he poisoned the kids against her. And that wasn't worth it to avoid the conflict. So it is not always a good thing. And I do think a consultation with a lawyer to really talk through the long-term consequences of the choices you're making is a good thing to do before you sign off on that divorce decree.
Oh, 100%. Because 9 times out of 10, this is probably the first time I've ever done this in ever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't have the degree and I don't have the experience and I haven't sat with thousands of families, but you have.
Right. There's a little bit of a crystal ball that we have that it's not like actually a crystal ball, but it's years of looking at families at different phases. Families who successfully divorced and sit together at church, families who have fought for 18 years, and everything in between. And so how can we take that knowledge of, this worked really well with this other family. Does that sound like something that might work for you? Mm-hmm. Like, take advantage of that.
Yeah. It's the same thing in my business. It's like, you can go buy a house or sell your house on your own. Sure. Go ahead and do that. Let me know how that works out when you're done. And I'll let you know what my experience has, you know what I mean? Like, same thing here. We have a crystal ball also. Mm-hmm. Sort of. Mm-hmm. We sort of do, because you can predict things once you've seen so many patterns and you understand all the different factors that go into it and could go into it. It's a lot easier for a professional that is experienced to put that together for you than you yourself that have now you have emotions and you maybe aren't getting sleep and all of this stuff that is a factor into that as well. Yeah. So totally agree.
Allow us to be an advisor. At the end of the day, you choose what you choose. And it's your life and nobody knows better than you, but have an advisor that you trust.
Yeah, I think that's giant. And so back to the easy street. Hey, we agree. And this is what we're going to do. Just do the paperwork. That's even true with children.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay. So I can decide, hey, you know what? Or we both can decide, hey, I'm taking this holiday. You're taking that one. It's an every other week thing. Okay, we're good. And then we just slide over the paperwork and it's done, huh?
Yeah. I even had somebody ask me, I don't think I've answered this one on TikTok yet, but I had somebody ask me, do I even need to get a divorce or do I even need to get a court order if I'm, unmarried and everything is working? Like, if we have everything worked out, why do I need to go to court? And it's a really interesting question. Mm-hmm. And the answer is you don't. Until you need to go, you don't need to go. Mm-hmm. As long as what you're doing works for the two of you. Like, in many ways, marriage is this state, social construct with its own consequences that we don't decide when we get married. It's not like anybody decides this is how I want our property to be split up if we get a divorce or things like that. We opt in to the default. And so no, you don't have to go to court. There are consequences to not going to court. You do lose some protection. You lose some legal authority when it's just between the two of you. But as long as the two of you are getting along, that works.
Well, and as long as you have it written out and it's stamped and all of that stuff and signed by the court, then it's a thing, right?
Well, yeah. So if we send it into the court and we get it stamped by the court, that's the law. Like that's the way it is. Like your uncontested divorce goes through, it gets processed, it gets signed, it's done.
Done. Mm-hmm. So interesting. I know we could sit here, Billie, for the next like 8 hours. How much time you got actually? No, I'm just kidding. Cheri, do you have any other questions for Billie while we have her?
Billie, do you do consults for our mamas?
Yeah, so our consults aren't free, but we do have pro bono days. And there's a pro bono day coming up this Friday from 4 to 6 at our Mesa location. That's family friendly, kid friendly. So if you have to bring your kids, we've got Santa Claus, we've got cookies, we've got crafts while you come in and get some pro bono advice. So we do that usually every other month.
How wonderful of you to give back. That is awesome.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. And we meet the coolest people on pro bono day, and we get to really help people. And so it's great. We love it.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you again, Billie, with Modern Law, based out of Arizona. You're only in Arizona, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right.
And if somebody wants to give you a call or get in touch somehow, what's the best way to do that?
You can find us online pretty much everywhere. Our website's mymodernlaw.com, or you can give us a call, 480-649-2905.
Awesome. All right, everyone. If you are interested in being a guest, just like the amazing Billie Tarascio on this show, please follow us at MOMnation on Facebook. Our handle is MOMnation USA, and we're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and now TikTok. Thanks to Cheri, she's like awesome. Are you guys friends on TikTok? Because
no, but we will be.
Yeah, you need to be, because she's like TikTok master over there. But anyway, find us on your favorite social media channel, send us a message, let us know why you would like to be a guest. And while you are there listening to this show, like right now, subscribe and download our episodes. Give us a little rating if you love us. Of course you love us. If you've been listening to us long enough, you definitely love us. So give us that 5-star rating and help us share this information out to the masses, get it to the people where it needs to go. Thanks so much, ladies. Appreciate you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.